Hi, I'm Dave Price with hosting-review.com, and we're here at HostingCon 2012 in Boston, and I've got the pleasure to sit here and talk to Matthew Prince, the co-founder and CEO of CloudFlare. Matthew, thanks for joining me.
Dave, thanks for having me.
Well, muchly appreciated. So, I've been doing some reading, hearing the buzz out there, right? There's some exciting news, but before we get into that, maybe you could give our viewers a little bit of an insight as to what CloudFlare is and how you approach optimization and performance.
Yeah, so CloudFlare, we think of ourselves as the web performance and security company. And what we are is a service that is going to make any website faster and protect it from bad guys. The way we do that is we run a network around the world of 23 data centers, and our system acts almost like a reverse proxy. So traffic passes through our network before it actually gets delivered to a host. And so a person with a website keeps their existing hosting provider, keeps all the software the same, keeps everything about it the same. They provision CloudFlare by just making a simple change to their DNS settings. It takes most people about 5 minutes.
And then the customer does that.
Yeah, the customer does that, or in some cases, actual hosting providers will do that. So one of the interesting use cases which has come up for hosts has been, you know, if you have a customer on shared hosting, and they all of a sudden get a real spike in traffic, that can impact a lot of your other customers. And so actually HostGator was one of our first partners, and they originally exposed CloudFlare just to their admin personnel, who when they saw one site that was getting a ton of traffic, they'd push a button, put it on our network, and that would be a more even load across all of their shared hosting customers. And so at the end of the day, what CloudFlare really is it's almost operations as a service. And we're trying to take any hosting provider with any kind of infrastructure, be it dedicated hosting or virtual private hosting or shared hosting or anything else, and we're trying to make it so that their hosting is as good as possible for any customer around the world that they want to service.
Okay, so you're making the web host look good.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Fantastic. So now, let's get back to the exciting news, right? So on top of your existing service, right, you've announced that you've got a new network optimization product. It's called Railgun.
Yeah.
Right? So what does that do? What does that inject?
So traditionally, CloudFlare offers CDN-like services where we'll cache things like, you know, the static logo on your site, or images, or CSS files, or JavaScript, stuff that doesn't change a lot. And we make it super easy to do that. So most CDNs are very hard to set up, complicated, and they charge based on bandwidth, and so consumers don't really like them that much. But we just made it super easy. But what we realized was there's a lot of dynamic content which is on sites, and you can't cache that. So when a request would come in for some dynamic resource, say a WordPress page or the front cover of the New York Times, if that was behind Cloudflare, then we'd have to go all the way back to the origin server, through our network, back to the origin server, and then we'd fetch all that content back through us. And we thought, wow, there's got to be a better way to do that. There's got to be something that we can actually reinvent the underlying protocol to make it significantly faster. And we were inspired by video streaming technology. So when video gets streamed and it goes from one frame in the video to the next frame in the video, you don't send all the pixels in the next frame, you only send the ones that changed. That's called delta compression. And so what we did was we took similar technology, at least philosophically similar technology, and applied it to the web. Because if you take the cover of the New York Times and you look at it over the course of 24 hours, it only changes about 5%. And if you could just send that 5%, then you'd save a huge amount of bandwidth. And if you save a huge amount of bandwidth, if you can compress data, it's as good as making the line a lot faster. And so Railgun is a service that we're giving away free to hosts. If someone comes to Cloudflare and signs up directly with us, we actually make them have at least a business class plan, which is a $200 a month plan. But for hosting providers, we say, we'll give this to you for free, and you can give it to your customers either for free or any rate that you want to charge for it. And what it does is, it sits software that sits in their data center, in the hosting provider's data center, and then software that sits on all 23 of our data centers. And it just compares the difference when a page is requested from one request to another, and it'll only transmit what changed. And that means that on average we get about a 99.6% compression ratio, which another way of thinking that is, if in the past it took 200 packets to deliver a web page, we can do it in a single packet. And that's turned into about a 7 to 10x performance increase, which is just, you know, there literally is nothing like it on the market. It's pretty neat. It's really great.
Right. So in that you mentioned 23 data centers. Any plans for expansion on that?
Yeah, so we just keep expanding quickly. The next data centers that are including those 23 that we're turning online are Sydney, Seoul, Seattle, Stockholm. Those are the 4 S's. Toronto, Atlanta, Warsaw, Vienna, and Prague. And so we're turning those on over the course of the next couple of weeks, and that's counted in those 23. And now we're looking at ways to get into Latin America. Brazil is actually our 3rd largest market, and we want to be able to really service hosts that are there and their customers. And then also getting into more in Asia and India, and then pushing further in Europe as well. Moscow, Milan, and Madrid are 3 cities that we're looking at there. And so we just keep, continuing to expand outwards, and then help hosting providers. If they have a data center, it doesn't matter where it is in the world, we want to give them access to our network so they're going to be as fast as possible for their customers.
Makes sense. So basically your growth strategy is to partner with as many quality web hosting companies that are interested in optimizing performance for their customers.
That's right. And so it's performance and security. So we have over 1,500 host partners that have signed up, and we work with all the major control panels, so cPanel or Plesk or Parallels Automation or any of those where you can install this simple, plugin, and then any of your customers can sign up for Cloudflare with literally 1 click. And that's great for hosts because it reduces the load on their servers, it reduces their bandwidth costs, and then one of the things that hosts really worry about is things like denial of service attacks. Our network is designed to be able to just stop those cold. In fact, I just gave a talk here at HostingCon on technologies to be able to stop DDoS attacks. And it's one of these really incredibly well-attended talks at HostingCon, because that's every host nightmare, is that they get knocked offline. And so we can help absorb that and keep the site online, just because, again, our network is large enough to take it on.
Excellent. So if there was one message, and typically I ask this question, to talk directly to the consumer, but talk to your potential partners out there. What's the one message that you would like to deliver to your potential partners to get further distribution of the Cloudflare service offering?
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is really build a better internet. And so we think of what we're doing as delivering like almost operations as a service. And so, being a host is it's a really hard job. And I think that my job as I'm working with partners is, if I can help like the ops guy and hosting provider sleep a little bit better at night, because he knows that his service is going to be fast, and he's going to be protected from attackers, and there are going to be fewer customer support requests, then I feel like I've done my job really well. And so we're always thinking, we're talking to hosts all the time, we're thinking about how can we make the service better for hosts, and that's really what motivates us at Cloudflare.
Right, and that's good for the end user. So who are some of the latest partnerships that you've embarked on?
So again, we have 1,500 hosting partners, and they range from the really, really big guys down to the small guys. But there were 7 that were initial launch partners of what we're calling the Cloudflare Optimized Partner Program. Yep. And these are folks that have Railgun. These are hosts that have Railgun and can deploy it to their customers. And the first 2 were actually really early partners of Cloudflare. We've had a really just great working relationship with them. And they were kind enough when we were alpha testing Railgun to let us kind of quietly test it and not tell anyone about it. So that was Vex Host, which is a Canadian host, if I recall correctly, and then A2 Hosting. And it was great working with them. And then 2 of our larger partners, Media Temple and DreamHost, both are on board. And then we're announced 2 other large partners, so Bluehost and Site5, and then HostPapa. And our team has always really liked kind of the marketing of HostPapa and sort of the green focus of them. And so those are the 7 that we initially launched with, but there's been a ton of interest here and just coming in. And we're just trying to make it just a no-brainer that anyone who's running a hosting service is offering Cloudflare.
Sounds like a no-brainer to me, and I like one of your taglines where you say that we can cache the uncachable. Yeah. Right? It's fantastic. And Matthew, I really appreciate your time.
Dave, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining me.